Wanted fugitive pulls a gun on a tomb guard. What happened next shocked everyone. He didn't blink. Not when the man lunged. Not when the gun emerged. Not even when the barrel leveled with the center of his chest, trembling inches from his heart. Sergeant First Class Nathaniel Cross just stared, silent, still, unshaken. The fugitive's hand trembled, sweat beading over sunburnt knuckles, as the weight of what he'd just done slowly registered on his face. His breath hitched, his voice cracked. "You think you're better than me?" he spat, eyes flicking left, then right, searching for an escape as if realizing too late the sacred ground beneath his boots. "What? You think standing there makes you some kind of hero?" Still, Nathaniel said nothing. The wind moved. He didn't. A crowd had begun to gather, tourists, frozen mid-step, cell phones held low but recording, uncertain whether to intervene or simply watch history sharpen its blade. The tomb of the unknown soldier had never seen this. Not like this. And yet, Nathaniel remained as he always had, unmoving, unblinking, unbreakable. That was the code. The vow. Even now facing death it held. Because some lines aren't drawn in chalk. They're carved in bone. Only minutes earlier, Nathaniel had taken his post in full ceremonial uniform. Dress blues pressed into perfection, white gloves immaculate, rifle polished to a mirror sheen. The air was hot August sun baking the marble around Arlington into something almost sacred. But he didn't feel the heat. Not anymore. The silence was part of the job. Expected. Demanded. But that day, it felt different. From the edge of the crowd, a man had emerged, shaggy, sun-leathered, eyes darting. No one paid him much attention at first. He blended into the crowd, like a scar on weathered skin. But his steps were too fast, too focused. He didn't come to mourn. He came to disappear. He passed the rope line, crossed the invisible boundary, stepped where no one was allowed. It should have stopped there. But fate, as it often does, had other plans. Nathaniel Cross had been a silent sentinel at the tomb for 6 years. He was used to all kinds, whispering tourists, distracted teens, weeping mothers. But that man, something about him was wrong. Not just in how he moved, but what he carried. He reeked of gasoline and desperation. His eyes weren't grieving. They were scanning, calculating. And then there it was, a flash of black beneath the tattered jacket. Nathaniel didn't move. He didn't flinch, but he saw it. The pistol. The man hadn't drawn it yet, but it was there, snug against his ribs, hidden poorly. Nathaniel did nothing. Not yet. Because the mission was the tomb. The unknown. The fallen. He would not abandon his post unless it meant protecting them. Nathaniel's story wasn't etched in medals or headlines. He didn't talk about what happened in Fallujah. He didn't tell anyone about the Humvee flipped on its side, or the way his sergeant had bled out against his shoulder, whispering apologies to a wife he'd never see again. He didn't speak about the day he came home and found the world smaller, the noise louder, and his own reflection a stranger. Instead, he stood watch. Hour after hour. Day after day. Rain, snow, blistering, heat, none of it mattered. Because in that silence, in that unwavering ritual, he found meaning, found peace, or the closest thing to it. The tomb wasn't just stone and ceremony. It was a promise. No soldier left unknown. No sacrifice forgotten. He stood not for the living but for the memory of those who no longer could. And that made him dangerous to men like the one with the gun. Because his silence was not weakness. It was defiance. The man moved again, closer this time. Security was already alerted, though they hadn't yet arrived. The crowd was still caught in the terrible gray between confusion and fear. A few phones rose, half hoping this was all some dramatic reenactment. It wasn't thing. When the man crossed the final barrier, the sacred line, Nathaniel's rifle moved. Just slightly. A whisper of metal on marble. It was enough. The man exploded. "Don't you point that thing at me. You think I'm scared of you?" He shoved his jacket aside. The gun flashed. A gasp rippled through the onlookers. And Nathaniel still didn't flinch. The gun was out now, fully drawn, arm extended, the fugitive shouting, fraying at the edges. Say something. Say something. Nathaniel's gaze remained locked, empty of fear, full of something far heavier. The stillness in his eyes was unbearable. The man staggered a step back, teeth gritted, the weapon shaking. He wanted chaos. He wanted a reaction. But silence is louder than any scream. Years earlier, that same silence had been Nathaniel's lifeline. He'd been pinned behind a concrete wall in Kandahar, 3 men down, comms jammed, the dust so thick it turned the sun to ash. The only thing that kept him breathing was stillness, listening, waiting. It was then he learned patience could save lives. Panic could take them. So now, with a barrel pointed at his chest, Nathaniel was not afraid. He was remembering and waiting, not for the gun to fire, but for the man to break. The fugitive's name would later be revealed: Daniel Reese, 38, dishonorably discharged. Wanted in connection with 2 armed robberies, 1 aggravated assault, and the carjacking of a minister in Alexandria. He hadn't come to the tomb to make a statement. He came because he thought it was a blind spot, a place no one would expect, a chance to vanish. But instead, he found something ancient. A man who stood not as a barrier, but as a wall. Unmovable. Unyielding. And that terrified him. From the far end of the plaza, footsteps approached fast, purposeful. 3 men in dark suits, 1 in a ceremonial beret. But it wasn't they who stopped the gun. It was the crowd. A woman's voice called out, soft, trembling. Please, don't. And something cracked in the man's face. The weight of silence collapsed around him like a falling cathedral. His fingers spasmed. His eyes filled. He lowered the gun, sank to his knees, and wept. Nathaniel still hadn't moved. Not until the pistol was on the ground. Not until Daniel Reese had surrendered to something heavier than lost shame. Then, and only then, Nathaniel turned his head. Just enough. And said his first words in over an hour. This ground is hallowed. Walk here with honor, or not at all. In the days that followed, video of the confrontation went viral. Not for the gun, not for the tears, but for the silence. Millions watched as a decorated fugitive, armed, desperate, was brought to stillness by a man who didn't even raise his voice. No warning shots. No shouted commands. Just presence. Unshakable. Uncompromising. Unspoken. Nathaniel never gave interviews. He returned to his post the next day, same time, same uniform. Reporters tried to catch him between shifts. Tourists asked for photos. Some even left flowers by the marble edge. He never acknowledged any of it. Only once, when a young boy asked why he didn't fight back, did Nathaniel pause long enough to answer. Some battles are won by refusing to become what you're fighting. Weeks later, at Daniel Reese's arraignment, the judge cited the tomb incident directly in his ruling. There is no honor in your actions, he said, but perhaps there is redemption in the way you were stopped. Reese was sentenced to 18 years. He accepted it without protest. In a letter smuggled to his sister, he wrote only this. He didn't even look scared. He looked like the man I always wanted to be. And so, the story became legend, not because of violence, but because it was denied. Not because a man pulled a trigger, but because another refused to pull anything in return. Honor isn't loud. It doesn't posture. It waits. In silence. In stillness. In sacred places. There are places where silence is louder than any speech. Where dignity holds more weight than force. Where standing still takes more courage than charging forward. The tomb of the unknown soldier is one of those places. And men like Nathaniel Cross remind us. True strength doesn't shout. It stands. If this story moved you, take a moment to comment below where you're watching from. Share your thoughts on what honor means to you. And subscribe to our channel for more stories that shine a light on silent heroes whose strength speaks louder than words. Let's keep remembering the ones who never came home, and those who never stopped standing for them.